This is Still Here, Still Queer. Now what? Your guide to queer midlife. I'm Paul Taylor-Pitt. I'm the author of Still Here, Still Queer. Now what? The book, coming everywhere 21st of October. An amazing guest on the podcast today. I'm a big fan of his work, so it was great to have a conversation with him. I'm talking with Matt Cain MBE. Matt is a novelist and also now a publishing powerhouse. Matt and his husband have launched their own publishing house called Pansy Books. And we talk about that in the conversation. We also talk about what it was like growing up, where Matt grew up at the time he grew up. We talk about his experience of the publishing world. We talk about his books. It's a lovely conversation. And I'm very, very grateful to Matt for giving the time. He's in the middle of a book tour. We wanted to get this episode out quickly because Pansy books are open for submission and there's a cutoff point for that. So we wanted to get this out now so that people listening to it might just think, do you know what? I've got a book in me. If you have an idea for a book and you're sitting on that and you think, oh, I'm not sure, do it. Do it now. All you have to do is put together a 2-page submission. That's all you have to do. So please enjoy, sit back, have the best time because I did. Here's Matt Cain. If someone was meeting you for the first time, who are they meeting today?
Oh, today. Somebody who's quite knackered because he's on tour and in promo mode for the new book, as well as mid-launching a new publisher and a Substack and quite knackered. But I mean, it is interesting when I often think the way that you present yourself to somebody when you meet at a dinner party or in a bar or whatever is quite telling. I would say I'm a novelist. I also do journalism and broadcasting. I'd probably say it like that, actually. And I would also say I'm a publisher now, and I don't know where that comes in the mix because I've not actually been asked to introduce myself since I've been running a publisher. But yeah, I'm a novelist. What I do is I sometimes talk about what I used to do because if somebody's not read one of my books, they may know me from when I was editor of Attitude magazine or when I was the arts correspondent on Channel 4 News. I sometimes bring those up because I can sometimes see people trying to, oh, I'm sure I know him from someone. And so, yeah, I used to do big jobs in the media, broadcast journalism, print journalism. Now I write novels and I'm new. I run a new publisher, an LGBTQ plus indie publisher, which has just launched. So how's that for an introduction?
I mean, I just want to say congratulations on all of it because it's such a great story that you keep adding these hyphens and going, oh yeah, I've been this and I've been that and then I've done this and now I'm doing this and then who knows what comes next. But I think all of it is amazing.
Well, the truth is, Paul, I sometimes, whenever I do talks in schools or whatever, I can sometimes, when I talk about my journey, I sometimes can see the kids looking a bit confused, particularly as I started off, I did a degree in modern languages, and then 10 years I made documentaries for ITV. So it feels like my path is all over the place. But the truth is, I grew up before the internet, in a small working class town in the north of England. And I didn't see, the saying is, if you can't see it, you can't be it. I didn't see anybody like me. I didn't see any working class novelists, really, never mind any ones from the north or gay ones. And I didn't know how to get to where I wanted to be. And I had to kind of make up the path as I went along. And I could always see one step ahead. And then I'd see the next step. And I kind of had to find my way blindly to get to where I wanted to be.
But did you know where you wanted to be? Like, did you always have that vision of, okay, that might be a few steps ahead, but that's ultimately where I want to end up?
No, because I just couldn't see it.
Mm.
What I did, knew I was always very creative. At school in the 90s, in state schools like mine, you basically, if you were creative, when you were at primary school, you did art. And when you were in secondary school, you did the school show. You did drama or whatever. That was basically all that was on offer. There was no creative writing group or anything like that. So
And were
I
you happy with putting yourself in those spaces? Like I would have avoided, well, I did avoid any of those kind of like drama, theatrical stuff because I would have felt like it was putting a spotlight on me. I much preferred just going off to my English class and just sitting quietly with a book or being in the library. Like I didn't have the confidence to go, hey, look at me and look at me being everything that I am.
I didn't really, but I had to force myself because I thought it was all that there was.
Mm.
You know, it's like when, you know, I often speak to gays of a certain age, and I say gays, gay men, it's more of a gay man thing because we had more of a physical scene with bars and clubs. That kind of euphoria of finding your people. First,
Mm.
go to gay bars and explore the physical scene. I mean, in the past tense. But for me, at least, as a quiet, shy boy who was very studious and intelligent and quite geeky, I only found one type of gay on offer. And that was you had to be loud and outrageous and sleep with everybody and go into the office on a Monday and entertain everybody with stories about giving somebody a blowjob in the disabled loo. Can I actually use language like that in this podcast?
Prefer you said toilet than loo, but it's fine.
But, you know, and you had to be into dancing in clubs till 3 o'clock in the morning, and
Yeah.
you had to get wasted and be into fashion. I couldn't care less about fashion, but anybody who knew me in my teens and 20s would probably say I was quite into fashion. I just thought that's what you had to do as a gay man. And it was the same for drama. You know, I did actually have a very inspirational teacher for drama who was very celebrating of difference and quirks. And it was a very strict Catholic school, so he couldn't be openly celebrating of queerness, but he
Yeah.
basically did as much as he could. And I know that's a bit of a cliche, the drama teacher, but I think for me, I didn't like the spotlight, but I did like self-expression. I did like being around the other kids who were accepting of difference and were a bit different themselves and were creative. And that was all that we had. Yeah.
How old are you now?
51.
Yay. What's 51 like for you?
It's all right, actually. I mean, funnily enough, I have got quite a few physical aches and pains and things going on at the moment. But if it weren't for that, you know, physical decay does start to set in. Everything sags. I mean, that's another thing. Body. What was special about me was never the way I looked or the bod. But that was the currency in the gay male world that I discovered, which I was so happy to be a part of after being universally loathed and attacked at school and in my small town. But, you know, all I found was we had great bodies and, you know, and we looked great. I didn't. But, and I wasn't interested in that, but I did everything I could. You know, I did have a 5-year period where I did have quite a good body. I kind of look back on that now and I think, how pathetically desperate. How could I not have realised that was not what was special about me and never would be? It was the brain and the creativity. But like I said, that was all we had to go on for a period. So it was that or what I'd had before, which was everybody hating me and kicking the shit out of me for being the very obvious gay boy in the class.
How do you feel about your body now? Other than, look, you know, I completely get it. Like my knees make funny noises and my elbow hurts. But I quite like my body now at 52. I'm like, actually, my body is amazing. It may not look like this or it may not look like that, but I quite love it. How are you feeling about yours?
I mean, I'm very lucky in that I'm mobile and, you know, those kind of things. You know, we are able-bodied, so we do have privilege there that we should acknowledge. But I feel kind of fine about my body, but I wouldn't say I loved it. I mean, I've got an autonomic condition that expresses itself in my heart, so I have a pacemaker. My spine's not straight. I've got terrible eyesight. I wore really strong glasses from the age of 7 until my 30s when I had my eyes lasered, and now I have to wear reading glasses. And if I don't have my reading glasses in my hand, I literally can't read the price of something in the supermarket. I
Yeah.
mean, you know, it's fine, but I wouldn't say I was, I wouldn't say I loved my body. I mean, it's the only one I'll ever have. So I'm fine about it, but I wouldn't say I loved my body.
When you think back to that kid who everyone else was saying was gay, do you remember what was going on around you, where you were? What was going on the news or in the charts when you first came out to yourself?
I was never into myself.
Mm.
I knew my earliest memories were knowing that I can remember going to nursery class at 3, 4, and the other kids telling me I was well, they used to say I was a girl first,
Hmm.
as if that was the ultimate insult. I mean, you can only be an insult if you think girls are somehow lesser than boys. But
Mm.
I come from quite a tough town. All the boys played football and had fights. I didn't. I was literally a freak of nature. And one of my earliest memories is in reception class going to. I had one friend who was a girl, and we loved each other. We did everything together. I used to go to her house after school and we'd play together. It was brilliant. But at school, well, actually, first, the early memory I was going to tell you about was I remember her putting some nail varnish on me. And I'm saying that as if it was against my will. I mean, I loved it. I was always dressing up in dresses and that kind of thing. But I went to school with nail varnish on. And it was literally like when I was 5. And it was Catholic school. We all had to join our hands and say prayers in the morning. And everybody just, thought it was the most hilarious thing and laid into me. My earliest memories were people telling me I was gay. I didn't know what it meant. But what I was going to say about playing with a girl, so first it was being a girl and then it was gay, and it didn't take long for the girl to go into gay. But my very obvious gayness was treated as a problem right from the start. So I had this one friend who was a girl, and I was banned from playing with the girls at school. It was considered dangerous for a man to be effeminate or anything other than very, members of my family would celebrate my brother by saying, "Oh, he's a proper lad." He played football, he had fights. "Oh, he's a proper lad." And I was like, "Well, what am I then? Not a real boy?" I just knew it from the start. And actually, funnily enough, Paul, I know that I'm sure we'll talk about shame and thinking there was something wrong with us, all of which I went through. And all my novels, in different ways, are about characters moving from a place of shame and self-loathing towards a place of self-knowledge and self-love. I did have all that, but at the same time, I did always have quite a strong voice inside myself saying, "What's wrong with me? This is not fair that you are attacking me for this. This is just how I am. What is wrong with me? Why shouldn't I be like this?" I do remember that all along.
I had the same, and I think I've had a slightly different voice, maybe a more arrogant voice that said, "There's nothing wrong with me. It's you lot that are wrong." And I don't know how I managed to get that superpower, but I never ever thought there was anything wrong with me. I just used to think the world was a bit wrong and they had to come round to my way of thinking. And so I don't think I felt shame, or I don't relate to it as shame, but I felt huge embarrassment. And I've always felt a difference between the bone deep shame that some people were infected with that never belonged to them. I don't think I ever had that. But I used to get really embarrassed by stuff. So I had a moment when I was maybe a bit older than your nail varnish moment, but I was doing something, it must have been like early secondary school. And actually it was for drama class, God. And I got this part and they said, you need to wear boots. And I didn't have any boots. And so I borrowed a pair of my mum's boots, and I borrowed the ones that looked most like the ones that Madonna wore in the Virgin tour. So they were like these little blue pixie boots with heels. And to me, totally natural. And I remember going into the class with these boots and pulling them out and people being like a record scratch, and then feeling so embarrassed. I didn't feel ashamed. I just felt embarrassed because I thought, oh, I've crossed a line that I didn't know existed. And they're all laughing and I'm embarrassed by that. But I also still knew in my head, it's like, yeah, but these boots are fucking amazing. Have you not seen the Virgin tour? So, there was a part of me that could keep it at surface level at some point, but also just seeing more and more of those signals, like getting louder and louder.
I know, and it was the signals at first, but then for me it became the kind of repulsion and the hatred, and
Mm,
particularly when kids started to realize about sex and listen to things that presumably their parents were saying about gay men. This
mm,
was the height of the AIDS crisis.
mm.
We couldn't be trusted around children. We were dangerous, deviant, sexual predators who were spreading disease. We couldn't control our sexual urges. People were obsessed with anal sex.
Still are.
Well, yeah, there still are. No, absolutely. But I have to say, there was a period, possibly before the internet and porn going mainstream, when straight people either didn't have so much anal sex or they didn't talk about it. And they were obsessed with what we did. Backs against the wall, Marmite Miner, shit stabber. I do think that straight men who've had anal sex or been turned on by anal sex with their female partners can't be quite so hysterical about it. I mean, the idea of a male being penetrated, which is the ultimate threat to the patriarchal order, is still something those kind of males, I imagine, would be repulsed by. I don't know, the fact that I do think porn, I'm not saying porn's a good thing, but I do think it took the edge off that hysteria around anal sex. I was terrified. The first time I had anal sex, I was terrified. I thought I'd be incontinent for the rest of my life. I thought I'd be in intense pain. I thought blood everywhere. I thought there'd be crap everywhere. I thought I'd be I thought I'd be incontinent for the rest of my life. Just all these things that I've been told in the playground. And there was no internet for you to look up sex advice.
From all those playground experts, this is what's going to happen. Oh, really? Tell me about your experience. But also those stories, like sometimes, whether we believe them or not, it's those things that you hang on to. And then you're like, oh, but that didn't happen. Actually, it was really good. It's so bizarre. I find it so bizarre that I haven't had a conversation with anyone who had conversations when they were younger about gay sex that didn't involve, well, firstly, full stop, or that didn't involve conversations about death. And
I know.
Just the way that they were like, and maybe it's different now, who knows, hopefully. But I certainly never had any conversations when I was growing up where gay sex was equated with pleasure.
No.
Nothing.
When you had sex education, it was about procreation and how the egg was fertilized. There wasn't anything about the pleasure for straight people. Never mind. I do remember being in a sex education lesson and one of the cool kind of liberal girls kicking off with the teacher for saying something homophobic.
Wow.
And obviously that's not something I could have done then because I was being savaged anyway. But I do remember this girl doing it. But it's interesting, isn't it, with all of those things, whether it's alcohol, drugs, sex, if you don't even acknowledge the fact that they're pleasurable, then when people discover them, well, first of all, there's more of a kind of dopamine rush for doing the forbidden. But, you almost attract people to them. But when people discover them and, I don't know, do a line of coke or whatever for the first time, they think it's the most amazing thing that they're discovering for themselves because, why not tell them the whole story? Yes, people will do drugs because they feel good in the moment, but what they can do is, and the same with, sex, I just didn't imagine it was going to be any pleasure involved at all.
Have you made up for that? And not necessarily just for yourself, but through your characters? Do you feel like that shows up in your writing?
The sex? Or... well, interestingly, I think with me, sorry, I'll just tell you about me personally. Actually, the thing about death, you're absolutely right, the association with death. And obviously we knew how to avoid death, the death that came from HIV that developed into AIDS. And basically it was a death sentence when we were growing up. We knew how to avoid it by getting a condom out and putting it on, but the second you bring a condom out, death enters the room and the of death. And I do think PrEP and PrEP broke that association for me, which was really important, and I did write about it. Have I got over it through my characters? Well, the interesting thing is when I started writing novels, I was just rejected by everyone, agents and editors, one after the other, over 50, all telling me my books were too gay, mainstream straight audiences wouldn't want to read them, wouldn't be able to engage with my characters. And then even when I crowdfunded my first book, The Madonna of Bolton, showed my homophobic rejection letters to The Guardian, picked up all this outrage, broke the record, it became a big hit. I got a mainstream deal then, but even then I was writing sex scenes and I had battles with my publisher because they said, once you write gay sex, you'll lose the straight female readers. When you're publishing fiction, something like 90% of readers of mainstream accessible fiction are straight women. They don't write straight men, they never even come up in the conversation. But you've got to keep the women on board. And I would argue that I was writing for the kind of sexually liberated women who love their gay friends and or the girls who stuck up for me in the school playground, like this girl I was telling you about in the sex education. But publishers were obsessed with, after the Madonna of Bolton, the first book I wrote was One Love, a first draft of it, which had my first sex scene in it, and publishers wouldn't touch it. So Entwistle, I tried again. The Secret Life of Entwistle became a really big hit. Loads of straight people loved it. I tried again. They wouldn't touch it. They said I'd lose all those readers. I wrote Becoming Ted, which had a love story in and some kind of sexual activity, but nothing on the page. Then I said, can I do One Love? And things were changing then. And they did let me do a gay sex scene, and that book did really well. But what I wanted to say to you was all this rejection, saying people wouldn't like my books because they were gay. And then all this, you can't have gay sex scenes, people don't like gay sex. It basically took me right back to the playground. People not liking me because I was gay, people being hysterical about gay sex, people going bonkers about anal. It was all the same stuff. So did I get over it through my characters in my books? Kind of eventually, but that journey kind of took me right back.
Yeah.
To the way of the soul.
It's those stories that we were told about. Like, I remember my mum having a conversation with me where she was like, but life's going to be so hard for you. I just want you to be happy. You can't, I hopefully can forgive myself now for not having the experience that I've got now back then. But now I look back on that and I think, well, the people who were telling me life was going to be harder were the ones who were making it harder. And they were the ones who made it hard. And it was almost like this self-fulfilling prophecy. And so, and it's kind of lose-lose. Like when I hear your story of what publishers are saying to you, on one hand, particularly now, we're having much more open conversations about should straight women be writing books with gay male couples. And if you think about the heated rivalry stuff and how everyone's frothing at the mouth over it, and I like it. I'm not saying it's a bad thing. What I've read and what I've experienced from that is people saying, well, actually, women love reading about gay sex because it's the kind of sex they want to be having.
And often the male characters are emotionally expressive.
Yeah.
Which is what they're looking for. Well, heated rivalry has completely changed that conversation.
Yeah.
So, my kind of successes were just blown out of the water by heated rivalry coming along and having sex on practically every page. And the TV show. But it's interesting, the TV show was a mega hit. Those books were only published in this country after the TV show. Shows you how bad it was. But they have helped us win that battle, actually. They absolutely have. But yeah, I mean, it's so, it's just bullshit that we're still having to talk about all this now, isn't it? I mean, what the fuck?
And is that what motivated you to start a publishing house?
Yeah. I got sick of, so I had this mega journey to get in there and it was just such a battle. And then I got in there and, my books were getting zero marketing budgets. Publishers choose priority titles and, you pay a retailer to get on the table on the bay, however many weeks in the charts, pick of the new releases. I'm not saying retailers don't also curate them. Some of them do. But these things are paid for. And I realized that although my books did well and some of them did very well, it was so much slog on my part. And they weren't doing things they were meant to be doing. And they also weren't being honest about what they were doing. Telling me my books hadn't been selected by certain retailers, for example, when I'd then meet the buyer from that retailer and he'd say, oh no, I read an advanced copy of your book. I loved it. Your publisher just won't pay. And, I'd realized they were kind of ticking boxes and And I knew, also the other thing is I knew it was happening to other authors in my position. The handful of us who were signed to mainstream deals after the Madonna of Bolton kind of kicked up a stink. And it was also partly, Paul, when I got the MBE for services to LGBTQ plus culture, I kind of thought, well, this is my moment to do something like that. And of this handful of authors, obviously we all know each other. I thought, well, they've not got the platform like I have, and I need to do it. So it was slightly that. And you know, when we were choosing the name, we did want a logo that would work at the bottom of a book spine, where, you know, Penguin is the most famous publisher by far. But we decided to choose a gay slur and reclaim it. That's why we called it Pansy, because I'm going to show you the little pansy at the bottom of the book spine.
Yeah.
You know, we did want, because that is what it's about, actually, was our journey to getting here. And that is why we've done this. And I thought it made sense to reclaim a homophobic slur. You know, but also it's Pansy. People often smile or have a little chuckle when they hear it. It's actually confrontational and political, but with a kind of lightness of touch.
Which I think comes through in your books. I mean, I first got to know your books through the Madonna of Bolton because I was like, someone's written about Madonna. And that was amazing. And I just thought it was such a powerful story. And I think I must have come across it just at the point when it was going from the, you know, crowdfunding to the mainstream publisher. And then watching your career just kind of go from strength to strength. You know, it's interesting to hear the behind the scenes stuff about how it was really, but seeing you refuse to take on the role of, oh, I'll just be grateful and actually just keep doing more and more and more is incredibly inspiring.
I actually did say that. It's funny you say that, Paul. I did say to my publisher a few times, why does everybody expect me to be grateful for these
Yeah.
fans? And I refused to be grateful. I'm sounding quite chippy today. It's partly because I'm knackered because I've just come off a book tour. But I say, you know, you started by asking, how is it to be 51? And I think what happens, I don't know, tell me about your experience, but you don't keep quiet anymore. You stand up for yourself more. You don't give a fuck. If somebody is going to tell me your book's not being selected by a retailer and I meet this retailer and he tells me that's absolutely not the case, I absolutely refuse to sit there sweetly and I will stand up in the meeting and I don't care if it's, you know, uncomfortable for that other person. I had an experience with years ago when I published a different type of book. When I was trying to get the Madonna of Bolton published and everybody rejected it, one publisher said to me, why don't you write novels with straight female characters and gay best friends?
None of those exist.
I know. Well, I found a way to do it which didn't compromise what I wanted to say, and I did have gay subplots, and all that was great. But I do remember my first book that was published, not the first one I wrote, which was the Madonna of Bolton, but the first one that was published. I remember there was a person at the publisher who did a terrible job.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody else complained about this person. And I was feeling so grateful to be published after the journey that I had that I didn't complain. And my editor thanked me for not making a formal complaint. And then said, so are you all right to work with this person on your next book? And I didn't want to work with this person because they'd done a shocking job and it had really affected the performance of my book. And my editor said to me, if you don't work with this person again, she'll be really upset because she really enjoyed working with you. And I thought,
Wow.
I know. And I smiled sweetly and said, oh, that's all right then. We'll work together again. And she did a shocking job again. When you get to the age of 51, late 40s, when I was being traditionally published the last time, that kind of thing happens. And you just think, fuck this. And I did quite like that about getting older. So there was another person who did, in a different role, did a shocking job on a few books I did with my last traditional publisher. And this time I spoke to my agent about it. My agent said, well, you can't say anything because we need everyone at the publisher to work really hard on your books and you don't want to be labelled an awkward author. And I just thought, fuck that. Why should I? You know, so I did. And I did complain. Anyway, yeah. I mean, I'm sounding really ranty. I kept a diary of everything, and I'm sharing my diary on Substack at the moment, partly to kind of because so much of when you do come from a background where you didn't expect to be in these positions, you often don't know how to do it or how to play it. It's really hard to negotiate your way through industries full of pushes and straight people. And I remember years ago when I started at Channel 4 News, I was an editor. And I remember another editor who I really liked coming to me from another desk and saying, do you mind if I ask you? She said, can I have a quiet word? Do you mind if I ask you how much you paid? And I didn't really know her that well. And I must have kind of hesitated. She said, because the thing is, they're telling me that we're all paid the same. And I suspect that's not the case. I told her what I earned. I was on 10 grand more than her. She then went to the bosses and said, it's not true, we're all paid the same. And 10 grand pay rise. And I thought when I was having these problems with publishing, I basically kept a diary of the whole thing because I thought if I share my story, there'll be other people who don't know that when their publisher tells them their book hasn't been selected for major retailers, it's because their publisher isn't paying for it. And I thought, if I don't share my story, I'm getting much more chippy and scrappy as I get older.
I love it. And because now you are a traditional publisher in your own right. And I love that you're describing Pansy as a boutique publisher. And I'm wondering what kind of experience you want to give your authors, not because you didn't have it. I don't think it's, that's not the motivation, but just how would you love your authors to feel when they talk about their publisher and they say, oh yeah, I'm signed to Pansy?
I want them to feel proud and I want them to feel valued and appreciated. I want to behave transparently and accountably, and I want them to feel in control. We're going to be equal partners. We're not giving a royalty. We're giving a profit share. And everything that's spent on paid marketing and all those PR, for a publicist, I want the authors to be involved at every stage so that if certain things don't work, we've done it together, and I don't know, just we get used to going through life and having so many punches, so much adversity. And there is this expectation that we should be grateful for things that other people consider the basics.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think anybody should feel gratitude when they've written an amazing book and it gets published.
It's not my proudest moment, but I was talking about it quite recently when it took me a long time to get a deal for my book. And I have to say it's all down to Abby, my agent, who's just amazing. But we had a year plus of rejections. And I remember being in Foyles with a friend and we were standing in the middle of Foyles and I remember shaking my fist at the shelves going, look at all this shit that straight people write. It's awful. And I can't get a book it was stamping my feet and feeling quite sorry for myself. But I thought, wow, there's so much crap out there. And here I am, so much of it. And here I am with this thing that I think is quite good. And people just keep telling me, no, it's not, you don't have a profile and it's not going to be that exciting for anyone. And yet straight people seem to have a bit more of an open door to just publish what they like. My sense is that
and when there's the occasional queer title, you get these straight people saying, oh, every book has a gay character these days. It's like stand in Waterstones, just at the front of the shop, and literally go through the books. Yes, you've got your Douglas Stewarts and your Alan Hollinghurst, which are great, but those literary books do tend to find a way through because they're not meant for a big audience. It's all about prestige, acclaim, awards. The publishing industry has a template for making success of those kind of books. But queer rom-coms, queer thrillers, queer detective series, queer crime, stand in Waterstones, how many of those do you see? And it's not just straight mediocrity that's being rewarded, particularly the upper middle class. I mean, publishing is just shocking for that. Yeah, certain doors being wide open.
I remember going into Waterstones on a day when I was feeling quite chippy and and actually they were both really lovely, it was nothing about them, said to two of the people who worked there, I said, oh, can you just tell me, what's your best-selling gay self-help book? And they just looked at each other and they went, oh, I don't know. Okay, hang on. And then they took me to the shelf and they were, we were looking in the self-help section. They were like, well, this one's kind of gay. And it really wasn't. And then I said, okay, just generally, what's your best selling, self-help book? And they were like, well, it's this is, and, they could name 500 of them. And I just remember thinking, okay, what's missing? And partly I think it's because when you walk in somewhere like Waterstones, and thank fuck they exist, but we've got the LGBTQ section, and it's my favorite section. But it's so different to when you walk into somewhere like the Common Press or Gaze the Word, and we have the whole shop.
And
It's like the difference between an exhibition at Tate Modern of queer art versus going to Queer Britain. It's like we don't just get one corner, we get the whole thing. I think what you're offering through Pansy is, oh yeah, we are the whole thing. We're not just going to be the queer section. We are a queer publisher publishing queer books. And it's not my place to be nervous for you, but my only nervousness is you're just going to be overwhelmed and flooded with submissions because so many people want to do it. How are you even going to decide where to begin? Because you're open for submissions at the moment.
yeah, we have open for submissions. Well, what we've said is because we're not looking for literary titles, we want books with the possibility of crossing over to a mainstream audience. Doesn't mean we're writing books for straight people. We're not. They have to be authentically queer. But we want to sell. That's where the gap is in publishing, not in literary fiction. So we've said we want a 2-page treatment from people. What's the hook? What's the kind of grab? And what's the opportunity for universal resonance? How's this going to resonate? Is it about falling in love? Is it about relationships? Is it about the fear of, I don't know, but things that can resonate across the board? And it's only then that we will look at full manuscripts because we want to do the best job. Also, we're aware of our limitations and resources we've got, and we're staying boutique. We're doing 4 books a year, 1 a quarter, so that each one can get a marketing budget. Each one can be a lead title. So our sales reps can present them to retailers as our lead title. We are slightly concerned about being inundated, but I'm not frightened of hard work.
Hearing you say that makes me think, actually, I'm not nervous at all. I'm excited. How amazing if you are inundated that so many people have so
Yeah.
many ideas. And I love that you're promoting the idea that we can be commercially successful, that we don't just have to accept, oh, well, it's a niche book for niche people and therefore you'll make no money out of it. That actually we can be commercially viable and that people will want to buy those books. I heard someone was at an event recently and they said if we were to put all of the queer people in the world on one place, we would be the 3rd biggest country in the world.
Really?
Yeah. And that why would people not want to think of us as a marketing force like we have got? And I think, yeah, what if people turn down our stories, they're just missing out on money. Never mind all the good stuff that comes with it. They're kind of walking away from a great source of income.
Just
What do you
alone? No, I know exactly what you mean.
exactly? If we were to have this conversation again in 18 months' time, what do you hope will be the story of Pansy at that point?
Well, my only area of nervousness, actually, where I really don't want to fall down, is we are an LGBTQ plus publisher. And I want to reflect the broad range of sexual identities and gender non-conforming identities. Obviously, we can't do that in 1 year if we're only doing 4 titles. But I hope that we get good submissions from every area of that. And that's something we don't quite have the control over, other than going out to seek submissions and engaging with trans authors, non-binary authors. They are much fewer in number. I hope that we get submissions from across the board. Also, I want to be ethnic. I've talked to you about the intersection of my sexuality with my social class and how that's been challenging for me navigating the world. I really want to look at race, ethnicity, and I hope we get good submissions from queer writers from the global majority. That's what I'm nervous about. We are really committed to reflecting that broad range. We can only work with what we're sent, and I just hope the submissions are good enough.
I mean, I have so many questions I want to ask, but also I want to just kind of leave it almost like in the hands of the universe that you've now sent this wish out and that it will be taken care of. It will be taken care of. That the right people will send you the right submissions and you will be so successful together because it's so needed. It's so missing, and particularly in the world at the moment,
I
to
know.
have a publisher that says, we really welcome people of color. We really welcome trans author. You know, it's just not being said. And it's
But
such
I
a
also
refreshing
think,
voice.
should I tell you what, Paul? I actually think this sounds really cold, but if you are a writer, you look for high stakes. And I'm sorry, but most romantic comedies between a straight man and a straight woman, they're very low stakes. Actually, if you want to create drama, intense emotion, if you are looking for, I don't know whether it's queer couples in the past, if you're just looking at relationship dramas or love stories or romances for a second, if you're looking at queer relationships in the past when there was illegality and
Mm,
criminal, the stakes are much higher. If you're looking at certain cultural groups now, or people from faith backgrounds, or their parents maybe from another culture that isn't as accepting, the stakes are higher. That's what you should look for as a writer, and that's what you should look for as a reader. So I think yeah, it's not just coming from a place of personal passion. It's also, I think there'll be better stories.
how will you deal with submissions that you think are obviously AI generated?
Oh, God. You know what? I honestly hadn't thought about that because I'm so rubbish with tech. People have asked me a few times how I feel about AI as a writer. It was only very recently I realized, don't laugh at me, but it was only very recently I realized you could actually write a whole book with AI. I mean, I use it as a Google search. I
Yeah.
use it as an internet search. I don't use it for anything else. I've never used it to write anything. Um, Apparently, I mean, maybe all your listeners are going to be laughing, your viewers. Um, Apparently, you can write a book about XYZ in the style of Matt Cain.
Yeah.
But I mean, isn't it just going to be crap? No.
You know, define crap. Like, I don't write fiction. And so, because I've always been quite scared of, like, for me, I really privilege originality. And I maybe take it a bit too far. Like, I'm always really nervous that anyone's going to think I've copied anything that's ever been done. I think partly it's being an only child. But because I don't write fiction, I thought, oh, I can play with AI and see what it would be like if I was a fiction writer, because I'm never going to do anything with it. And
But
so I
what do you
said to
put
it,
in then? What do you type into
well,
it?
I said to it, because I, you know, also I overshare with it. So I was like, I've never written fiction before. I really want to write a fiction story that's going to be a bestseller, heated rivalry. It's got to be like a queer love story, and it's got to be like attractive to TikTok people. And then it gave me three options. I can't remember the other two, but the option it gave me that I thought, oh, I have to see where this goes because it sounds awful. The option it gave me was a story about two jazz musicians, and one of them dies, obviously. And at night, for one window of an hour, the other one reappears every night at midnight, and they spend that hour making music together. And I was like, well, so? I don't see the point. What's the point of that story? So then I got into conversation with it and was like, okay, so why is this interesting to anyone? And they were like, well, because it's all about survival. It's all about hope. It's all about, you know, letting go of the past. Well, okay, I'm not sure about that. But anyway. And then I said things like, you know, give me some hooks that Gen Z will love. It said, well, Gen Z loves analog stuff. So when they're recording music together, they do it on cassette. And you need to have a moment where Gen Z will hold the book up to TikTok and cry. So you need to have a moment where there's like a love letter that gets discovered. And I just thought, oh, this is awful. This is empty. It's hollow art that has no soul whatsoever. It's paint by numbers. And so while there might be aspects of a story where I go, curious, I wonder how that would resolve, I have no interest. I love writing.
I know.
I
I've
love
no
writing.
interest.
Why would I want something to do it for me that produces a pile of garbage?
I mean, I sometimes hate writing. It can be really hard when you're wrestling with something, as you know. But I mean, when I do, maybe AI will get better in the long term. I'm assuming it will. But if I do just a simple chat GPT search, sometimes it gives me incorrect answers.
Yeah.
I don't know. I have no interest in it, that I've not really prepared myself, but maybe I should do. But somebody'd have to have quite a lot of balls to submit an AI generated. Is there some kind of filter for you to check?
You can, I mean, I guess it's a bit like the snake eats its tail. I think you can put something into ChatGPT and say, do you think this is real? And it will tell you where it thinks. Because I think there are certain, I was going to say vocal structures, sentence structures that to me, if I see someone posting on Instagram, I think, yeah, you didn't write that. You know, there's certain kind of hooks that it keeps spitting out. And I guess what you're inviting is a 2-page submission, which my sense is would be easier for ChatGPT to create rather than please write me a book. You know, if I said to it, I want to submit, here's the submission criteria, here's a background to Matt, this is what they're looking for, please write me a 2-page submission. I mean, I might do it and send it to you offline and just go, what do you think of this? Just because that's the kind of thing that you might then get. And you might not, because the people that want to write those stories are probably doing it from their own experience or because they have some kind of empathy or a message. You know, I think the stuff you get from AI has no empathy. It has no message. I'm partway through Castle of Secrets at the moment. And I mean, I'm already going, God, how's this going to end? Because Castle of Stories.
No, I know, but do you think AI could have written that book?
No, because the stuff, and I don't want you to spoil anything for me because I'm at the part where the family have just arrived in Italy. And so they're all, and you know, the kids are going, where's the Wi-Fi? And I think there's so much nuance to, like, all of the characters feel completely full. They feel so, I know those people and I know the things they're worried about and I know the things that they are excited about. And it's so human. So yeah, ChatGPT could probably write a book which is following a particular path, but it's empty. As when I'm reading Castle of Stories, I'm sitting going, God, I don't want to spoil it for anyone else. Even when Adam like goes out for his farewell drinks, I was thinking, oh, something bad's going to happen. And I just don't think you get that from a machine. You get that from someone's heart.
I do think, so it is interesting you saying AI doesn't have heart. I agree with you. And when I write, I find it impossible to write without heart. I remember editors have suggested to me at times writing a thriller, you know, I just don't know how I could do that. My books are about human connection, self-love, and everything comes, some of them are more autobiographical than others in terms of what actually happens and the settings. But everything comes from my experience of the world that all goes in here, and then it comes out in different ways. And I suppose an AI engine does something similar. You feed stuff in and then it comes out. But surely, yeah, I'm not interested in that. I love, even though it can be very hard to write a novel, I love getting it out of here and getting it on the page and hearing people say it resonated with them, it moved them, they recognized little things, and they'd lived through a similar experience, they saw themselves. That's really rewarding. And actually, this is a good example of what I was saying to you about Pansy needing universal resonance. Well, nothing can be universally resonant, but wide resonance. I think one of the privileges of being queer is not having to follow templates for life. We're expected, queer means alternative, we're expected to live a life that's different to our siblings if we have them. And often when it comes to relationships, you know, I wrote a book called One Love, which was about romantic sexual relationships and the blurred boundaries with friendships amongst gay men. And my two characters in that were kind of trying to work out what they were to each other, but having grown up when the only templates were straight rom-coms, or then you get the kind of heteronormative aping of that. And actually, I think the best thing about being queer is just being able to invent everything ourselves. When I got married, we just completely invented the ceremony and everything ourselves. How boring is it when you go to those straight weddings when they're just a wedding by numbers? And there's none of them in it. And I think as queer people, we are afforded more freedom to invent ways of life, relationships that reflect our uniqueness and authenticity. And after writing One Love about romantic sexual relationships and friendships, with this one, I wanted to write about queer families, alternative families, you'll see as you read on, I'm not going to give too much away, but creating families that don't follow any template but reflect and respect who we are as authentic, individual, unique human beings. And actually, that kind of message is in a lot of my books. And straight readers often say to me they were inspired. The books inspired them to live and love a little more freely. And I do think, we're all unique, aren't we? So why should living authentically be a privilege reserved for queer people? Why can't straight people have a bit of that?
I talk about it in my book. As I was talking to people about their experience of midlife, what I was realizing was there's a social scaffolding that exists for straight people. I don't think it works for them, but it's there. It's like leave school, go to work, get a job, go to university if you want to, have kids, get married, all that, retire, die. And we were wrapped around that social scaffolding when we were kids with the expectation that that was going to be who we were. And there's a point, I think, particularly in middle age, where we go, hang on, either it hasn't worked for me so far or it was never going to work for me anyway. But we're kind of looking at the next stage going, and we still have to build it for ourselves for this next stage. This, whatever happens between 50 and 100, we still don't have the templates. We still don't have the role models. So again, we are building our own scaffolding. I don't think straight people enjoy being in their own scaffolding, but they're quite attached to it. And I can see why, because it's quite comforting to know, oh, that's just my next natural step. Like a lot of the conversations I'm having with middle-aged folk now, more and more we're talking about care home. And even then I think, oh no, hang on, that's still a straight scaffolding story that one day we will end up in a care home. And so we need to think about that. Actually, what could it look like over the next 50 years to create completely new paths into elderhood for queer people? But we're the ones who are doing it. If I want to make that change happen for myself in my future, I need to be doing it now. And I love in your work that you're not creating imaginary worlds. They're very ordinary worlds that people can relate to, but they show us ways of being which are different. They show us that it's not always easy to come out of a marriage and then go, actually, I'm gay, and how's my ex-wife going to think about that? But we'll do it anyway, and we'll work through it. And maybe a straight person will read that and go, yeah, I don't have to stay in this marriage. So I just think the way that you're working is you're laying these paving stones which are creating a path to a different future. And I think especially with you having now a publishing house, I just think that's so exciting.
I'm
That's so
writing some of this
exciting.
down. I'm writing some of this down because I'm loving it. The whole thing about scaffolding and laying the paving stones. You're inspiring me, Paul. But basically, that is why you've absolutely hit the nail on the head. That is why I write. And that's when people say, what do you want people to come away from, to take away from your books? What thoughts do you want to leave them with? It's basically that.
I feel like we could talk forever. And I will maybe save a part two. We haven't even talked about Madonna. I mean, I thought that was going to be top of our list. We'll have to save that for the
That's
comeback.
a whole other podcast.
That's part two, as in Confessions 2. The thing I ask everyone at the end of the conversation is to fill in the sentence, which is the title of my book. So my book is Still Here, Still Queer, Now What? So if I was to ask you to end the sentence, I'm still here, I'm still queer, and how would you complete it?
I'm getting queerer. I'm actually getting queerer. I have less interest in the scaffolding and what we can learn from it. I'm getting queerer, I would say.
If you wanted people to find you, if you wanted people to find Pansy, if you want people to submit, if you want people to submit in terms of submissions, or if you want people to submit, either way.
Their work. So, yeah, absolutely. Pansybooks.co.uk is the website. Pansybooks.co.uk. Pansy Books UK on all the socials. I'm Matt Cain Writer on all the socials. That's also the address of my website. Please do connect.
Thank you so much for today. I've loved this conversation, and we'll definitely have a part two. And thank you for doing what you do. Just more of it, please. More,
and
Matt.
You too. More Paul. Well, there's more Paul coming, so that's good.
Maybe that can be my next tagline for my social media campaign. More Paul coming. I mean, who knows?